Think you know everything about the Brown family's wilderness adventures? Think again. Behind the cameras of Discovery's longest-running reality series lurked shocking secrets that would make even the most devoted fans question everything they thought they knew. From hired actresses posing as girlfriends to fake gunfight scenes and a patriarch who served jail time while filming, the truth about Alaskan Bush People is far stranger than any scripted drama could ever be. Fact 1. The gunfight that never happened. One of the most dramatic moments in Alaskan Bush People's early history turned out to be completely fabricated. The episode called Fight or Flight, which aired during the show's first season in 2014, opened with an ominous disclaimer that read, "The Discovery Channel was given permission to document the life of a secluded Bush family. During production, an incident occurred and filming was stopped." What followed was a heart-pounding scene that had viewers on the edge of their seats, watching the Brown family face what appeared to be a genuine life-threatening situation. In the episode, the family is suddenly awakened in the middle of the night by the unmistakable sound of 2 gunshots fired somewhere outside their remote cabin. The men of the family, led by patriarch Billy Brown, immediately spring into action, grabbing their weapons and rushing outside to investigate the potential threat. The entire sequence was filmed through the eerie green glow of night vision cameras, adding to the tension and making the danger feel incredibly real. As the armed Browns cautiously moved around their property, searching for the source of the gunfire, prompting the family to retreat back inside their cabin and ultimately make the difficult decision to abandon their homestead entirely. The dramatic episode showed the Browns packing up their belongings and leaving their supposedly isolated wilderness location, eventually ending up living on a boat in Ketchikan. Billy Brown himself appeared visibly shaken as he told the cameras, "This land is not worth dying for," explaining the family's decision to flee what they believed was a dangerous situation that threatened their safety. However, when reporters later investigated this shocking incident, they discovered that Alaska State Troopers had no record of anyone affiliated with Alaskan Bush People ever reporting gunshots fired near their property. The truth was far less dramatic than what viewers had been led to believe. According to official reports, the actual incident involved a frustrated neighbor who had grown tired of the constant noise from helicopters filming the show overhead, so he shot fireworks at the aircraft to drive them away from his property. Fact 2. Noah's actress girlfriend was hired for TV. When Noah Brown appeared to find love in Season 5 of Alaskan Bush People, fans quickly became suspicious that something wasn't quite right about his romantic storyline. The episode, titled Driving Miss Rainey, aired in 2016 and featured Noah inviting a woman named Karina Kaufman to visit the family's remote compound for what was presented as their first official date. According to the show's narrative, Noah had met this beautiful brunette while the family was spending time in California, and they had exchanged phone numbers before she agreed to make the long journey to Alaska to see if she could adapt to his unconventional wilderness lifestyle. The date itself was painfully awkward to watch, with Noah giving Karina a tour of his living quarters, which happened to be a converted chicken coop, before serenading her with a song about his previous heartbreak while playing an electronic keyboard he claimed to have found at the local dump. Throughout the entire encounter, Karina remained politely detached, describing Noah as a very different and interesting person, while clearly showing no genuine romantic interest in him or his bush lifestyle. Sharp-eyed fans didn't take long to investigate Karina's background, and what they discovered completely undermined the show's portrayal of their chance meeting. Karina Kaufman turned out to be a professional actress and model from San Diego who had competed in the 2012 Miss California pageant and appeared in several short films, including The Song of Birds and Bees, 16 Love, and Love in the Time of Flannel. Most damning of all, her IMDb page specifically listed Alaskan Bush People as one of her acting credits, strongly suggesting that she had been hired by the show's producers to play the role of Noah's potential love interest, rather than being a genuine romantic prospect who had traveled to Alaska out of authentic interest in the youngest Brown son. The fact that the show's producers went to the trouble of casting a professional actress for this storyline raised serious questions about how many other supposedly authentic moments in the series had been similarly manufactured for television. Fact 3. Billy Brown married his 15-year-old wife at age 26. The foundation of the Brown family story includes a marriage that raised eyebrows when the details became public years after Alaskan Bush People premiered. Billy Brown and Ami Brown tied the knot on June 16, 1979, in Tarrant County, Texas, but their marriage certificate revealed an age gap that sparked significant controversy among viewers and critics of the show. At the time of their wedding, Billy was 26 years old, while Ami was only 15, creating an 11-year difference that many found troubling by modern standards. The marriage was technically legal under Texas law at the time, which allowed girls as young as 14 to marry with parental consent. Ami's mother agreed to sign the necessary paperwork, but only under the condition that her daughter would continue attending high school and complete her education. According to Billy's memoir, One Wave at a Time, he described meeting Ami as love at first sight, writing that she was the most beautiful young woman I had ever met. Billy was working as a plumber at Ami's mother's house when they first encountered each other, and they began seeing each other in secret before her family discovered their relationship. The situation became more complicated when Ami's family learned that Billy had not been entirely truthful about his background. He had misrepresented his age initially, and they discovered he was not as wealthy as he had led them to believe. Perhaps most significantly, Billy had failed to mention that he was already divorced and had 2 children from his previous marriage to a woman named Brenda. Despite these revelations, the marriage proceeded, though it came at a significant cost to Ami's relationship with her family. Shortly after the wedding, Ami stopped attending school despite the agreement her mother had insisted upon, and she cut off all contact with her family members. Her mother and brother later blamed Billy for this estrangement, claiming that he was controlling and deliberately prevented his young wife from maintaining relationships with her relatives, a pattern that would continue throughout their decades-long marriage. Fact 4. They lived half a mile from a pizza place. The entire premise of Alaskan Bush People was built around the idea that the Brown family lived in complete isolation, far removed from modern civilization and the conveniences that most people take for granted. The show repeatedly emphasized how the family had to hunt, fish, and forage for all their food because they were supposedly so deep in the Alaskan wilderness that they had no access to stores, restaurants, or any other aspects of contemporary life. Viewers watched as the Browns struggled to find enough food to survive, often eating leaves and scrounging for whatever they could find in nature to keep themselves fed during the harsh Alaskan winters. However, investigative reporting revealed that their supposed remote location was far from the isolated wilderness that Discovery Channel had portrayed to audiences. The Browns' property near Hoonah, Alaska, was actually situated less than 10 miles from the town center. And more shockingly, there was a pizza restaurant called Grizzly Pizza, located approximately half a mile away from their so-called wilderness compound. This meant that instead of desperately hunting for food in the wild, the family could have easily walked to get a hot meal whenever they wanted. The owner of Grizzly Pizza, Billy Williams, confirmed to reporters that the area where the Browns filmed isn't Manhattan, but it's not the middle of nowhere either. He explained that while the show had provided some economic stimulus to the local community, many residents were frustrated with how the production was misrepresenting their region. Williams noted that some people were very upset about them, didn't want them filming them, didn't want them around, didn't like the way they were portraying the community. The revelation that the Browns had such easy access to modern conveniences completely undermined the show's central narrative about their struggle for survival in the untamed Alaskan bush. Local newspaper editor Matt Lorenz put it bluntly when he told reporters that 95% of the people pretty much saw the farce there, comparing the show's relationship to reality to professional wrestling. Fact 5. The family stayed in luxury hotels while filming. While viewers watched the Brown family supposedly roughing it in their cramped one-bedroom cabin with no electricity or running water, multiple local residents reported seeing them regularly coming and going from one of the area's most comfortable accommodations. The Icy Strait Lodge in Hoonah, Alaska, became an unexpected part of the Alaskan Bush People story, when neighbors Jay Erickson and Becky Honeycutt began documenting the family's frequent visits to the upscale hotel, completely contradicting the show's portrayal of their primitive living conditions. According to these eyewitness accounts, the Browns were spotted at the lodge at all hours of the day and night, with Honeycutt specifically noting that all of the boys have their own rooms at the facility. This revelation was particularly striking, given that the show consistently emphasized how the entire family of 9 people shared a single small cabin in their wilderness compound called Browntown. The contrast between their supposed living situation and the reality of individual hotel rooms painted a very different picture of how the family actually spent their time when cameras weren't rolling. The situation became even more telling when locals discovered that the Icy Strait Lodge wasn't just serving as accommodation for the Brown family members themselves. The entire production crew from Discovery Channel was also staying at the same hotel, turning it into an unofficial base of operations for the filming of Alaskan Bush People. Crew members were frequently seen relaxing at the lodge between shooting days, enjoying the comfortable amenities that stood in sharp contrast to the harsh wilderness conditions they were filming. Perhaps most damaging to the show's credibility was the fact that eldest son Matt Brown was reportedly spotted at the hotel bar trying to meet women, behavior that seemed completely at odds with the family's supposed isolation from modern society and their claims of having little contact with outsiders. These sightings suggested that rather than being the secluded wilderness family they portrayed on television, the Browns were living much like any other reality TV cast, with comfortable accommodations provided during production. Fact 6. Billy and Bam Bam served jail time on ankle monitors. In what became one of the most serious legal challenges the Brown family faced during the show's run, patriarch Billy Brown and his son Joshua Bam Bam Brown were sentenced to 30 days in jail for committing fraud against the state of Alaska. The charges stemmed from their illegal collection of permanent fund dividend checks, which are annual payments made to Alaska residents from the state's oil revenue. Between 2010 and 2013, Billy and Bam Bam falsely claimed to be full-time Alaska residents, while actually spending significant portions of those years living in other states, fraudulently collecting a total of $27,000 in dividend payments they were not entitled to receive. Alaska law requires residents to live in the state for at least 1 full calendar year, and limits absences to no more than 180 days per year to qualify for these dividend checks. Court documents revealed that the Browns had actually left Alaska in October 2009 and didn't return until August 2012, yet they continued filing applications and collecting money during this entire period. Billy's attorney, James McGowan, attempted to explain the situation by saying there were some absences down south when they were trying to promote the book, referring to Billy's memoir. When Juneau Superior Court Judge Philip Pallenberg sentenced the father and son in January 2016, he specifically rejected an earlier plea deal that would have involved no jail time, stating that this is a theft from every Alaskan and emphasizing the need for deterrence. However, both Billy and Bam Bam were deemed eligible for electronic monitoring rather than serving their sentences in an actual jail facility, because they were classified as very low-risk offenders. The Alaska Department of Corrections confirmed that both men reported to Juneau to have ankle monitors attached and were required to check in with a probation officer weekly and provide urine samples throughout their 30-day sentences. The arrangement allowed them to serve their time while remaining at home, though they were prohibited from possessing weapons or alcohol during the monitoring period. Fact 7. Matt Brown claims production supplied him drugs. The mysterious disappearance of Matt Brown from Alaskan Bush People after Season 8 became much clearer when the eldest Brown son made shocking allegations about what happened behind the cameras during his years on the show. Matt, who had struggled with alcohol addiction and completed 2 separate rehabilitation programs in 2016 and 2018, eventually broke his silence about the circumstances that led to his substance abuse problems and his eventual departure from the series that made his family famous. In a raw and emotional Instagram video posted in April 2021, Matt made the explosive claim that members of the production team had actually provided drugs to the family during filming, which he believed significantly worsened his addiction issues. According to Matt's account, rather than being the wholesome wilderness family portrayed on television, the reality of filming involved access to substances that contributed to his downward spiral and made his recovery much more difficult than it should have been. Matt first entered rehab in 2016 after being arrested for driving under the influence in Juneau, Alaska, following what he described as a night of partying that got out of control. He told reporters at the time that he had started hanging out with people who drank and that, while I was around them, I started drinking, explaining how his problems had gradually escalated. After completing a 35-day program, he briefly returned to the show but ultimately relapsed and required a second stint in treatment at the Betty Ford Center in 2018. The serious nature of Matt's allegations, combined with separate accusations of sexual assault that surfaced around the same time, led to his complete removal from the show. Most of his family members reportedly cut off contact with him following these revelations, and Matt now lives alone in Loomis, Washington, where he continues to focus on his sobriety while sharing his recovery journey through social media channels with his hundreds of thousands of followers. Fact 8. Billy's lost daughter reunion was completely staged. 5. One of the most emotionally charged storylines in Alaskan Bush People's history turned out to be entirely fabricated for television drama. The episode titled Growing the Wolf Pack in Season 5 featured what appeared to be a deeply moving reunion between Billy Brown and his daughter Twila Byars from his first marriage, with Billy claiming on camera that he hadn't spoken to or seen his daughter in 30 years, since she was around 14 years old. The show portrayed this as a genuine moment of family healing, with Billy's 7 other children meeting their half-sister for the very first time and welcoming her into their wilderness compound called Browntown. However, investigative research revealed that this supposedly spontaneous reunion was completely manufactured by the show's producers. Sources close to the family confirmed that Billy had actually maintained an on-and-off relationship with Twila throughout the years, contradicting his emotional claims about 3 decades of separation. Even more damaging to the storyline's credibility was the discovery that Twila's social media posts showed her traveling to Southern California at the exact same time that reports placed the Brown family in that region, suggesting they had met in person well before the filmed reunion took place. The elaborate deception became even more obvious when fans discovered that Twila Byars was actually listed as an administrator for a private Facebook group dedicated to Alaskan Bush People, alongside Barbie Phillips, who happened to be the manager of the Icy Strait Lodge, where the Brown family was frequently spotted staying during filming. This connection suggested that Twila had been involved with the show's production in some capacity long before her supposedly surprise appearance on camera. The staged nature of this reunion was particularly troubling given how the show used genuine family trauma as a plot device, with Twila sharing the heartbreaking story of losing her 14-year-old daughter in a car accident as motivation for wanting to reconnect with her father. Billy's response during filming, where he said he was heartbroken when I heard about Twila losing her daughter. But even worse than that, I lost my first granddaughter, seemed calculated for maximum emotional impact rather than authentic grief. Fact 9. One son secretly works as a director. While most reality TV shows maintain a clear separation between their cast members and production crew, Alaskan Bush People blurred these lines in an unusual way that most viewers never realized. Joshua Bam Bam Brown, the second oldest son of the Brown family, quietly took on additional responsibilities behind the camera that went far beyond his role as a cast member appearing on screen with his relatives in their wilderness adventures. According to production sources, Bam Bam occasionally stepped into a directing role for certain scenes throughout the show's run, giving him the unique position of being both a subject of the documentary-style series and someone helping to shape how that story was told to audiences. This dual role allowed him to bridge the gap between the production team and his family members, ensuring that the wilderness skills and family interactions that were central to the show's appeal were captured in the most authentic way possible given the constraints of television production. Bam Bam's involvement in directing scenes showcased his growing interest in the technical aspects of television production, suggesting that he saw the show not just as a way to document his family's lifestyle, but also as an opportunity to learn about the entertainment industry from the inside. His unique perspective as someone who was both living the experiences being filmed and helping to direct how those experiences were presented to viewers gave him insights that typical cast members or crew members working separately never have. This behind-the-scenes role demonstrated how the evolving nature of reality television production sometimes requires cast members to take on responsibilities that go beyond simply being themselves on camera. Bam Bam's directing contributions often focused on capturing genuine family interactions and highlighting the wilderness survival skills that were supposed to be the core of their lifestyle, though his involvement in shaping these scenes raises questions about how spontaneous and unscripted the moments viewers saw on television actually were in practice. Fact 10. The show filmed in Washington, but called it Alaska. When matriarch Ami Brown was diagnosed with lung cancer in 2017, the Brown family made the difficult decision to leave their longtime home in Alaska to seek better medical treatment in the lower 48 states. This health crisis marked a major turning point for Alaskan Bush People, as the family relocated to Washington state, where they purchased a massive 435-acre ranch in Okanogan County, about 24 miles northeast of the small town of Tonasket. Despite this significant geographical change, Discovery Channel continued to market and promote the show using its original Alaskan Bush People branding, even though the family was no longer living anywhere near Alaska. The network maintained the show's identity as being about wilderness survival in the harsh Alaskan environment, while the reality was that filming had moved to a completely different state with a much milder climate and easier living conditions than the remote locations where the series had originally been shot. The Washington property, which Billy Brown reportedly paid $415,000 to acquire from previous owners Wilbur and Teresa Hallnewer, consisted of 4 separate plots of land, ranging in size from 40 acres to 190 acres. This massive ranch provided the family with far more space and resources than they had ever possessed during their supposed wilderness years in Alaska, yet the show continued to present their lifestyle as a challenging struggle against the elements. The deceptive marketing became even more problematic when considering that some episodes were filmed at the lodge at Palmer Lake, a luxurious 4-level, 10-bedroom estate with a wine cellar that cost approximately $3,000 per week to rent. The contrast between the family's actual living situation on their spacious Washington ranch and in upscale rental properties versus the continued portrayal of them as struggling wilderness survivors highlighted just how far the show had drifted from its original premise, while still trading on the Alaskan wilderness brand that had made it popular. Fact 11. Wikipedia lists exact coordinates that don't match reality. The official Wikipedia page for Alaskan Bush People contains a peculiar detail that reveals just how confusing the show's actual filming locations have become over the years. As of 2022, the page lists 2 specific locations where the series is filmed: Keechagoff Island in Alaska and Palmer Lake in Washington state. The page even goes so far as to provide exact GPS coordinates for these locations, including specific coordinates for what appears to be a camper, presumably belonging to cast member Bear Brown, who has discussed living in a trailer with his wife on the show. However, these official coordinates don't align with where family members actually live, according to public records and news reports. The discrepancy became apparent when Joshua Bam Bam Brown was involved in a serious car accident on a Washington highway that tragically resulted in the deaths of 2 other people, though Bam Bam was not at fault for the incident. Initial news reports about the accident listed his residence as Loomis, Washington, based on information from his driver's license, but this address doesn't match the Palmer Lake coordinates listed on the show's Wikipedia page. The situation becomes even more confusing when examining how fans have marked locations on Google Maps related to the Brown family's North Star Ranch. Multiple different locations appear on the map, with some marked in Loomis, while others are placed in Tonasket, Washington. The Tonasket location appears to be the most popular among fans, and has received the most reviews, suggesting it's the generally accepted location for the Browns' ranch, yet this still doesn't correspond with the official Wikipedia coordinates. Adding to the mystery, the Wikipedia coordinates point to the exact center of Palmer Lake itself, rather than to any property or structure where filming might actually take place. This geographical confusion raises questions about whether the show's official documentation accurately reflects where the family members actually live and work, or if the coordinates are simply placeholder information that doesn't correspond to the reality of their living situation. Fact 12. Ami Brown has a criminal history of welfare fraud. Long before Ami Brown became known to television audiences as the quiet, devoted matriarch of the wilderness-dwelling Brown family, she had her own encounters with the legal system that would foreshadow the family's later troubles with government fraud. Court records and background checks revealed that Ami had a documented criminal history involving welfare fraud that occurred years before Alaskan Bush People ever premiered on Discovery Channel, establishing a pattern of questionable dealings with government benefit programs that would continue throughout the family's rise to fame. The specific details of Ami's welfare fraud case remain somewhat obscured by time and the complexity of accessing older court records, but the documented history shows that she was involved in fraudulent claims for government assistance programs designed to help families in financial need. This early brush with benefit fraud would prove to be a preview of the much larger and more publicized legal troubles that would eventually engulf multiple members of the Brown family when they were charged with illegally collecting Alaska. Permanent fund dividend payments. While living outside the state, Ami's criminal background became part of a broader pattern of legal issues that plagued various Brown family members both before and during their television career. Her husband Billy also had a criminal history that included charges related to horse theft in 1980, while their legal troubles with the Alaska dividend fraud case would later involve nearly the entire family in criminal charges that resulted in jail time and significant financial penalties. The revelation of Ami's welfare fraud history added another layer to questions about the family's credibility and their portrayal as honest, hard-working people trying to live off the land. The fact that both parents of the Brown family had previous criminal convictions involving different types of fraud suggested that their later legal troubles with the Alaska dividend case were not an isolated incident of poor judgment, but rather part of a longer pattern of attempting to obtain government benefits through deceptive means. Fact 13. Billy Brown wrote the book that inspired the series. One of the most misleading aspects of Alaskan Bush People's origin story was Discovery Channel's repeated claims that the Brown family was a recently discovered group of wilderness dwellers who had been found living in isolation, far removed from modern society. This narrative suggested that television producers had stumbled upon this unique family purely by chance and decided to document their extraordinary lifestyle for curious audiences who had never seen anything like their off-grid existence before. However, the reality of how the show came to exist was far more calculated and commercially driven than viewers were led to believe. 7 years before Alaskan Bush People premiered in 2014, Billy Brown had already written and published his memoir titled One Wave at a Time. In 2007, the book's description revealed that it was a true adventure of how a scared boy, orphaned at 16, grew to be a dad and husband of character as he fought to survive in the wilderness of Alaska while running from the emptiness left by his childhood loss. According to sources familiar with the show's development, Billy had actually been actively trying to sell the rights to his book to television producers for years before Discovery Channel finally picked up the project. When his efforts to sell the book rights through traditional channels proved unsuccessful, the Brown family reportedly decided to take matters into their own hands by traveling to Alaska and filming their own material to demonstrate the visual potential of their story for television audiences. The book served as the foundation for everything viewers would later see on Alaskan Bush People, from Billy's tragic backstory involving the loss of his parents and sister in a plane crash, to the family's decision to live off the grid in the Alaskan wilderness. Rather than being a spontaneous documentary about a family that producers happened to discover, the entire series was essentially a televised adaptation of Billy's previously published autobiography, making the recently discovered family marketing angle completely false from the very beginning. Fact 14. The family's secret language is questionable. One of the most distinctive features that set the Brown family apart from other reality TV families was their unique way of speaking, which included unusual accents, made-up words, and phrases that Discovery Channel claimed had developed naturally during their years of isolation in the Alaskan wilderness. The show frequently highlighted how the family had created their own dialect and terminology as a result of spending so much time away from mainstream society, with family members using terms and expressions that viewers had never heard before and speaking with speech patterns that seemed unlike typical American English. However, linguistic experts who study how language develops in isolated communities have raised serious questions about the authenticity of the Browns' distinctive speech patterns. According to specialists in sociolinguistics, families or communities that become genuinely isolated from broader society typically don't develop the kind of theatrical, almost performative language quirks that the Brown family displayed on television. Real linguistic isolation usually results in the preservation of older speech patterns or the gradual adoption of features from whatever limited outside contact exists, rather than the creation of entirely new vocabulary and exaggerated pronunciation habits. The artificial nature of the Browns' speech became even more apparent when considering that the family had not actually been as isolated as the show claimed. Given their frequent stays in hotels, regular contact with production crews, and documented time spent in various cities across the United States, the family would have had continuous exposure to standard American English throughout their supposedly wilderness years. This ongoing contact with mainstream society would have made it nearly impossible for them to develop and maintain the kind of distinctive dialect they displayed on camera. Perhaps most telling was how inconsistently family members used their unique speech patterns, with some episodes featuring heavy use of their made-up terminology and unusual pronunciations, while other segments showed them speaking in much more conventional ways. This inconsistency suggested that their distinctive language was more of a conscious performance choice, designed to enhance their television personas rather than a natural result of their living situation. Fact 15. A wildfire destroyed their set during filming. In August 2020, the Brown family experienced one of the most genuinely dramatic and unscripted moments in the entire history of Alaskan Bush People when a massive wildfire swept through their Washington state property while cameras were actually rolling. The Palmer Fire ignited on Palmer Mountain near Loomis, Washington, on Tuesday, August 18th, and quickly grew into a devastating blaze that consumed approximately 6,000 acres of forest and grassland, including the land where the family had been filming their reality series. What made this natural disaster particularly significant for the show was that the Alaskan Bush People production crew was present on the property when the fire began, meaning they were able to capture the real-time emergency as it unfolded, rather than having to recreate or dramatize the events after the fact. Cast member Solomon Bear Brown confirmed the severity of the situation through a post on his private Instagram account, writing, "We suffered a devastating loss yesterday. A fire swept through our mountain. Our home! The loss seems to be great. It's still burning. I'll keep everyone posted. God bless." The Washington Department of Natural Resources issued a Level 2 evacuation notice at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, which meant that residents in the affected area needed to be prepared to leave immediately if conditions worsened. Unlike many of the manufactured emergencies and staged dramatic moments that had characterized previous seasons of the show, this wildfire represented a genuine threat that required real evacuation procedures and actual emergency response from local authorities and firefighting crews. The fire was not fully contained until several days after it began, and the cause remained under investigation by state officials. For a reality series that had faced constant criticism about its authenticity and scripted storylines, the Palmer Fire provided one of the few completely genuine moments of drama and uncertainty that viewers had ever witnessed, as the family and production crew dealt with a real natural disaster that could not be controlled, predicted, or manufactured for television purposes.